In the midst of the world's darkest war, two of history's greatest minds were chosen by their nations to join a secret race. A race to build a weapon so powerful it could end the war, by threatening to end the world itself. But the man who won the race would lose his soul. This is the story of a terrible triumph. Echoes of Genius. Oppenheimer versus Heisenberg. Chapter 1. The Two Prodigies. In the vast, empty deserts of America, a new world would be born, while in the ancient forests of Germany, another was fighting to survive. On one side of the Atlantic, J. Robert Oppenheimer, a mind of dazzling theoretical brilliance, but a spirit plagued by poetry and doubt. On the other, Werner Heisenberg, a German patriot, a natural leader, whose confidence in his abilities seemed as boundless as his genius. They were both disciples of a new, strange, and powerful religion: quantum mechanics, a revolution that was tearing down the old laws of physics. At its heart was the atom, once thought to be a simple, predictable machine. But this new science revealed it was something far more mysterious. Oppenheimer's mind moved in the abstract, seeing the theoretical possibilities that others could not yet imagine, while Heisenberg's genius was in grasping the ungraspable, famously articulating the uncertainty principle that now governed this new quantum world. They were two stars in the same constellation of genius, their paths crossing at conferences, not yet aware of their shared, terrible destiny. That destiny arrived in 1938. News from Berlin. Scientists had split the uranium atom. Nuclear fission was no longer theory. In an instant, the world changed. The power locked inside the heart of matter could now, potentially, be unleashed. A warning was sent to the American president, signed by the world's most famous scientist, Albert Einstein. A new, terrifyingly powerful bomb was now possible. In Germany, the military moved quickly. The nation's top physicists were summoned, their genius now a strategic resource for the Nazi regime. And in America, the military began its own quiet search for a mind brilliant enough to lead a project of unimaginable scale and secrecy. The man chosen was a surprise to many. Not a stable leader, but a volatile, unpredictable theorist. J. Robert Oppenheimer. His German counterpart was the obvious choice: Nobel laureate Werner Heisenberg, now tasked with leading the Uranium Club to build a bomb for Germany. America's effort would be hidden in a secret city built from scratch on a remote desert mesa, Los Alamos. While Germany's project was scattered, its heart hidden in subterranean laboratories racing to build a nuclear reactor. Two geniuses, once colleagues in the pursuit of knowledge, now preparing to lead rival armies in a new kind of war. It was a race not just between nations, but between two men to unlock the secrets of the universe, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Chapter 2. The Quantum Race. To build a weapon that could end the world, America first had to build an impossible city. On a remote desert mesa, Los Alamos rose from the dust, a secret metropolis dedicated to a single, terrible purpose. And at its center was J. Robert Oppenheimer. The eccentric theorist was transformed into the director of the largest scientific project in human history, a conductor orchestrating an army of geniuses. He gathered the brightest minds of the free world, many of them refugees from the very fascism they were now racing to build a weapon against. Inside, Los Alamos was a crucible of intellectual fire, a place where the known laws of physics were challenged, debated, and weaponized around the clock. Their greatest challenge was plutonium, an element so unstable it had to be crushed into a perfect sphere with the force of 32 simultaneous explosions. A feat one scientist compared to crushing a beer can into a perfect ball. Meanwhile, in Germany, the effort was starkly different. Werner Heisenberg led a smaller, fractured project, starved of resources and plagued by internal scientific rivalries. Their entire focus was not on a bomb, but on a nuclear reactor. A design that was elegant in theory, but ultimately a slower, more difficult path to a weapon. A series of critical miscalculations, like abandoning purified graphite as a moderator, sent the German project down a costly and time-consuming road. The Americans, by contrast, threw their full industrial might at the problem, building city-sized factories at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, for the sole purpose of enriching uranium. While the German effort was constantly hampered by the realities of war, with Allied bombing raids and sabotage destroying their precious supplies of heavy water, Oppenheimer was under immense pressure from the military. General Leslie Groves demanded results, deadlines, and a level of security that clashed with the open culture of scientific discovery. Heisenberg faced a more sinister pressure: the demands of the Nazi regime, a government that did not tolerate failure, and where the cost of dissent could be fatal. The weight of his terrible secret began to consume Oppenheimer. The man who loved poetry was now building a weapon of mass destruction, and the moral paradox was eating him alive. For both men, the clock was ticking louder every day. It was a race against the enemy, a race against the limits of physics, and a race against themselves. The Americans pursued two separate paths to a bomb: a simple gun-type device for uranium, and a fiendishly complex implosion design for their plutonium gadget. In Germany, their experimental reactor never achieved a self-sustaining chain reaction. They were years behind, struggling with a scientific puzzle the Americans were on the verge of solving. Then, at Los Alamos, a critical breakthrough. A new calculation proved the impossibly complex implosion device could work. The path to the plutonium bomb was suddenly clear. They prepared for the final test. The scale of their gamble was becoming terrifyingly real. Building a massive steel vessel to contain the explosion should the nuclear reaction fail. Oppenheimer himself held the warm plutonium core in his hands. The gadget, a small, heavy sphere that held the power of a new, man-made sun. As the German project was being abandoned and hidden in a cave, the American bomb was being carefully hoisted to the top of a tower in the desert. The quantum race was over. One side had failed. The other was about to succeed, with world-changing consequences. Chapter 3: The Moral Crossroads. On July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, the final product of $2 billion and 3 years of secret work sat atop a steel tower. A storm raged, as if nature itself was protesting what man was about to do. Miles away, in a concrete bunker, J. Robert Oppenheimer waited. His entire project, the fate of the war, and perhaps the future of the world, came down to this single, terrifying moment. The world's greatest scientists lay in the dirt like ancient priests, their minds unable to fully comprehend the destructive power their own hands had built. The final countdown hit 0. For one eternal, silent second, nothing. And then, a flash, a light not of this world. Blinding, silent, and absolute, it turned the desert night into a terrifying, holy day. A fireball of magnificent and horrifying beauty began to rise. A new star born on Earth, churning with the colors of creation and unimaginable destruction. Only then did the sound arrive. Not a sound, but a physical force. The roar of a new god sweeping across the desert, the first testament to the unleashed power of the atom. And then came the cloud, a silent, sublime, and dreadful column climbing miles into the sky, the symbol of a new and terrible nuclear age. In that moment, watching the terrible beauty of his creation, a line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, entered Oppenheimer's mind. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. The theory had become a soul-shattering reality. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in a bugged country house in England, Werner Heisenberg and Germany's top scientists were living as prisoners, completely unaware that the race had been lost. When they heard the news of an atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, their first reaction was disbelief. They were certain the Americans could not have solved the puzzle they themselves had failed to crack. But the puzzle had been solved. And on August 6, 1945, the weapon born in the desert was delivered to the world. A single, silent flash of light over a city that seconds before had been full of life, work, and family. The successful test was now a weapon of mass destruction. J. Robert Oppenheimer's gadget had fulfilled its terrible and devastating purpose. For Heisenberg, the news brought a complex storm of emotions. Professional failure, shock at the scale of the destruction, and perhaps a quiet, dark relief that it was not his name, but Oppenheimer's, that was now attached to this new horror. At Los Alamos, there were celebrations. The war would soon be over. But its chief architect, J. Robert Oppenheimer, felt no joy, only the immense, crushing weight of what he had done. He tried to express his profound guilt to President Truman, to explain the terrifying future of nuclear proliferation he had helped to create. He famously told the president, "I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman, a man of politics, saw only weakness and dismissed him. The quantum race was over. Oppenheimer, the victor, would be haunted by his success for the rest of his life. Heisenberg, the loser, would spend his life defending his failure. Both men were now chained to the bomb forever. Chapter 4. The Two Legacies. In the immediate aftermath of the war, J. Robert Oppenheimer was celebrated as a national hero. He was the father of the atomic bomb, the man whose genius had ended the war. Werner Heisenberg returned to a nation in ruins, a world-class genius from a defeated Nazi regime, now tasked with the monumental job of rebuilding German science from the ashes. But Oppenheimer, horrified by his own creation, used his newfound fame to advocate for international control of nuclear energy, warning of a future filled with even more powerful weapons. His opposition to the next generation of weapons, the hydrogen bomb, put him on a direct collision course with the powerful political and military forces in Washington. In the paranoid frenzy of the McCarthy era, America turned on its hero. His loyalty was questioned, his past associations used against him, his character assassinated in a humiliating security hearing. The father of the atomic bomb was officially declared a security risk. The man who had given America its ultimate weapon was cast out, stripped of his influence. He spent the rest of his life in a quiet academic exile, a man forever haunted by the terrible power he had unleashed upon the world, and rejected by the country he served. Heisenberg, meanwhile, rose again to prominence. He became the respected director of the Max Planck Institute, a leading public figure in the scientific reconstruction of West Germany. He spent decades carefully shaping his own legacy, writing and speaking about his role in the war and trying to explain why the German atomic project had failed. But secret recordings of the German scientists made while they were prisoners revealed their utter shock and disbelief that the Americans had actually succeeded. It left the world with an unanswerable question that follows his name to this day. Was Werner Heisenberg a patriot who simply failed to build a bomb for Hitler? Or was he a secret saboteur who succeeded? Oppenheimer found a fragile, melancholy peace in his final years. A man who had flown too close to the sun and been permanently burned by its fire. Heisenberg found purpose in teaching, passing on his immense knowledge of the quantum world, but never fully escaping the moral shadow of his wartime choices. In the end, the tumultuous lives of the two great rivals came to a quiet close, but the terrifying force they had awakened would never be put back to sleep. They left behind a world living under a permanent nuclear shadow, a civilization forever held hostage by its own destructive genius. A world where their physics powers undetectable submarines capable of ending human history in minutes, and yet also powers clean cities, offering a potential solution to a world hungry for sustainable energy. The atom itself remains the ultimate paradox they left us, a source of infinite life and a source of infinite death. Two geniuses. One built the bomb and was destroyed by his conscience. The other failed to build it and was defined by that very failure. They were two brilliant, flawed, and fateful echoes of genius, whose intellectual race created the terrifying and wondrous atomic age we all still inhabit today.